In the late 19th and early 20th century, trains were the most glamorous way to get around the country, with many trains having amenities like 5-star dining and luxurious bedrooms. But as many people switched away from riding trains, most of that glamour was lost, with trains nowadays being just a way to get from point A to B. However, some commuter railroads were able to keep a piece of that glamour into the 21st century. When trains were the only way to travel, many amenities were available to passengers as they enjoyed the scenery and flew around the country in the comfort of a train. Many of these amenities were offered on commuter trains, with several railroads offering commuter clubs where riders would pay a monthly membership to gain access to a luxury rail car to commute in every day. These cars would have their own attendants who would serve continental breakfasts and coffee in the morning and drinks in the evening. But membership in these cars was not cheap, as the membership dues were responsible for paying the railroad for the operation and maintenance of the car, as well as for the car attendant. But as the decades progressed, more and more commuters were not paying their memberships, opting to instead commute by car or other means. By the 1960s, most commuters had left the trains in favor of cars and buses, and the quality of service suffered. The commuters that remained did not have a luxury car to ride every day. They had nothing even close to that. They were lucky if the train had heat and that the roof didn't leak. In the 1970s, many of these struggling private commuter rail services were either subsidized by local governments or shut down entirely. Immediately, the service did not change, except for perhaps a new logo on the same old rundown equipment. But change was coming for many commuter railroads across the United States. These agencies wanted to bring people back to the rails, and they knew that the best way to do that was to improve their image. These agencies started to order new equipment to replace the old rundown equipment of their former underfunded selves. New coaches with electric heating, lighting, and air conditioning became the norm, but some railroads went a bit further than this, including some additional amenities to bring passengers back for sure. Railroads ordered some of this new equipment specifically modified for luxury, with these cars having full bars staffed by an attendant that would serve coffee in the morning and drinks in the evening. This ultimately was a success, bringing people back to the rails due to the modern and relatively stress-free travel experience. The first of the 3 railroads to do this was the Rock Island Railroad, which offered a refreshment car on its commuter services out of Chicago in the late 1960s. Then the Erie-Lackawanna followed in 1970 with a bar car in its trains out of Hoboken Terminal in New Jersey. And finally, Penn Central operated bar cars on the New Haven line out of New York City. While these cars were operated by private railroads, they were subsidized and purchased by local governments. These cars were not as luxurious as the commuter clubs that came before them. However, they were a welcome sight for commuters after a long day at the office. The cars the 3 railroads operated were similar on the inside, containing a bar as well as dedicated standing and sitting areas for enjoying beverages. These cars, however, weren't without their problems. When these cars entered service, ridership was relatively low and trains had plenty of room. But as time went on and ridership grew, some trains had standing room only, and for most commuters, having a seat was more important than having a drink. This led New Jersey Transit, who operated the Erie-Lackawanna cars in New Jersey, to convert their 10 cars back to standard coaches in 1987. Also, Metro-North, who operated the Penn Central cars on the New Haven line out of New York City, converted half of their 20 cars back to standard coaches from 1985 to 1988. This left half of the Metro-North fleet with 10 cars in service, as well as the Rock Island fleet, which was now operated by Metra, and service had expanded with these cars to cover a total of 3 of their lines. These remaining cars would survive into the 21st century, operating just as they always had, but these cars were far from safe forever. The Metra cars were the first to go. In the early 2000s, Metra was strapped for cash, but ridership was increasing. To combat this, Metra ended the refreshment car services on the 3 lines that offered it in 2008 and converted the cars back into standard coaches. This change left Metro-North as the only commuter operator of bar cars, but these cars had their days numbered. The cars that were the bar cars were modern when they entered service in the 1970s, but it was now the 2010s and these cars were over 40 years old, and thus it was time for replacement for the whole fleet. Thus, the last bar car would run in 2014, and while there has been talk of reinstating bar cars on the new fleet for years, so far this hasn't happened, and given the current situation, it likely never will. Bar cars were from a time that no longer exists, but they are fondly remembered by those who frequented them each day, hoping one day they will return. Be sure to subscribe for more.